Hello, everyone. It's Lee again. I would like to apologize in the delay of getting this video out. On Friday, June 3rd, I was in a somewhat significant car injury. My vehicle was totaled. I spent a few hours in the emergency room, and just the mental and physical toll of that, and having to deal with insurance and trying to find a new car in today's market just took more of a toll on me than I would have thought or would have liked. So again, I apologize in the delay of getting this video out. We left off, I had just had my second craniotomy. They had removed again the original piece of skull that they had done, cut out for the first craniotomy because it had gotten infected, and they just tossed it in the trash. So at this point in my life, I was living with a giant softball size hole in my skull. A few days after the surgery, they flew me back to Syracuse. The day of the flight, it was raining, and the EMTs and the nurses that were on the flight had to transport me from the ambulance to the plane via a stretcher. And I can't imagine it was an easy task because I've always been somewhat of a bigger person. After I was on the plane, my mom tried boarding and she slipped and fell down a few stairs. Luckily, she wasn't badly injured, and my father was there to see us off. He did not join us on that flight. He had to go back to his unit out in California and get the proper permissions and stuff, approvals, so that he could return back to Syracuse and be with me for my recovery. The flight was approximately 2.5 hours long, give or take, from Austin to Syracuse, New York. The flight was rushed because, from what I remember, there was a blizzard approaching Syracuse, and the pilots and everyone were worried that if they didn't land before the blizzard, that either A, they wouldn't be able to land, or they'd have to divert to another airport, and that would have obviously made things just more of a pain in the butt. During the flight, I was experiencing some incredible pain, and the nurses on the flight, it was a med flight. There was only myself, my mom, two nurses, and the pilot and the co-pilot. So while I was experiencing the pain, the nurses gave me a shot of some kind of pain medication. It wasn't morphine. I don't remember what it was at the time, but it's put me in an interesting state of mind. I thought I was flying, and I know flying, I was on a plane, so technically, yes, I was flying, but that's not necessarily the type of flying that I'm referring to. I was in a interesting place. It worked. I did not feel any pain for the remainder of the flight. Um, we got to Syracuse on time. The blizzard hadn't ruined anything yet. We were able to land, and they transported me again to another ambulance that took me to the Syracuse VA hospital, which where I stayed for approximately another 2 weeks until I was able to actually go back to my house. After getting there, they checked me in. Everything was good. I believe I hung out with my mom for a few hours, and then after she left, I was getting ready to go to bed, and I stood up to go to the bathroom, and I don't think I was wearing much of anything at all, if I was wearing anything. And when I stood up, an alarm sounded off and scared me. I had no idea what was going on. And a few seconds later, two nurses come busting through the door, and again, I have definitely looked better in my life. And I was informed by them at that point in time that I wasn't allowed to get out of bed without assistance, which was weird to me because just a few months earlier, I was on active duty in the military. I was doing all these crazy things, and then not being able to stand up or go to the bathroom without help. That was just a really weird um, transition, I guess. So they helped me, they assisted me, helped me go to the bathroom, got me back in bed, went to sleep. I don't think there was any other problems that night. The next day, an older administrative lady came into the room. She was very unpleasant. She yelled at me for what seemed like a long time, but in reality, it was probably only 5 or 10 minutes. And she instructed me that I should have known better, that I was informed that I couldn't get out of bed. That's why the alarm went off, and blah, 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 blah. And I had told her that in reality, no one had informed me that I wasn't allowed to leave my bed without assistance, and she didn't believe me. And again, she continued to yell at me and berate me, which was, again, after going through all this stuff and being in the hospital, wasn't exactly um, something that you wanted to happen, someone yelling at you. Um, Later, I was informed, or I had realized the reason why I wasn't able to do things on my own. That had me go to physical therapy, and throughout physical therapy, I had to use a walker. The effect of the infection and just the initial injury on my head, my balance was off. The muscles were weak in my legs from being hospitalized, and just the injury and the preceding infection, what it did to my body was more than I could apprehend at that point in time. So through the 2 weeks that I was there, between going back and forth between physical, occupational, speech therapy, I for the first couple of days, I believe I had a nurse wheel me around in a wheelchair. But after the first few days, I was able to wheel myself around and get around the hospital without needing any help. Again, I still was not allowed to walk without assistance or without using a walker. So I had to push myself around in a wheelchair. Um, it was entertaining to me. Again, still the whole not being able to walk on your own thing was kind of a blow, but doing wheelies and messing around in a wheelchair at the time was somewhat of a comic relief to the whole thing. While I was in the hospital, I had a lot of friends come and visit. That was good. A lot of times they came just for mental health and just to support me, which was good, again, because without friends, things could have turned out a lot different. Often, a lot of times too, they brought me food, because anyone who's ever spent any time in a hospital knows just how absolutely miserable hospital food is. So that was, again, another plus in having them bring me outside food to help keep me sane. A couple months before my injury, I was in a somewhat significant relationship, and during my before my injury, it ended abruptly and not very pleasantly for either of us. Um, and while I was in the hospital back in Syracuse, my ex had come to visit, and it was a relief to see her. It was good to see her, and during our time in the relationship, I thought things were going to work out and things would have ended differently. So it was a relief to me to see that I guess I wasn't hated as much as I thought I was. Otherwise, she would have had no reason to come and visit. Again, that'll play out more in an upcoming video. Around this time, being in Syracuse, being in the hospital, things started to come into question. I started to wonder how the events of my injury actually happened, and things just didn't necessarily add up with the story that I was told at the time, that I was standing on the running board of Karen. I'll call her Karen, um, the girl that was with me during my accident or my injury. I was standing on the running board of her truck and I slipped and fell and cracked my head. Um, but again, there was a lot of other injuries, that scrapes and bruises and stuff that I had noticed throughout my time in the hospital, and that it just didn't make sense, the story that I was told, with the injuries that I had sustained. So again, I started to question what I was being told. And I guess my parents had um, been wondering about this before, but they just decided not to tell me because they probably figured that I had enough going on, that that wasn't something that I needed to worry about at that time. During my stay, again, I did physical therapy, I did occupational therapy. The occupational therapist was pretty great. Before my injury, I was really bad with money. While I was in the Marine Corps, my parents had to Western Union me money more times than I care to count or care to admit to. But I was, as most Marines, into drinking a lot. I'd also got myself into playing paintball, and that, anyone knows, that can cost a lot of money. Um, the food on base, for the most part, wasn't necessarily any better than the food in the hospitals. So a lot of people would order food and just go out to eat. And I found many ways to spend what little money the military had given me. So during my stay in the hospital in Syracuse, and the months and months of therapy that I had received after I was released to go home, the occupational therapist had me do a lot of exercises to help save money. And at the time, I really wanted a really nice Canon camera, or Nikon maybe, and she had me keep a journal of all the times that I spent money, how much money I had spent, and if the money was spent for necessities, food, water, things like that, or if it was just stupid stuff that I wanted to buy. And during that, I was able to save enough to get the camera, and it made me realize how much money I was just spending on stupid things. Um, the point of this is, I've been told since then, um, through other doctors and other brain injury programs that I have been to, that a lot of people that suffer from traumatic brain injuries are bad with money. And I laugh because I'm better with money now than I was before my injury, and so I guess it took suffering a traumatic brain injury for me to understand how finances work. It's just weird to me. While I was in the hospital in Syracuse, they had me go and see a counselor. The counselor and I didn't really get along. I don't necessarily remember the reason why, but soon after I was released, maybe a month or so after I was released from the hospital, I had canceled my time with him. I had wanted to stop seeing him, and just it wasn't working out. I wasn't receiving any type of benefit from our sessions together. And this is important because, for whatever reason, I thought that since I wasn't receiving any help from my sessions with this counselor, that meant that I didn't need counseling at all. And that couldn't have been further from the truth. And it is unfortunate that it took me approximately 8 or 9 years to realize that that couldn't have been further from the truth. And I say this because, again, I know there are a lot of people going through these types of problems. And just because something doesn't work for you doesn't mean that you should stop searching for the help. I can only imagine who knows what things could have changed and what things could have went different if, instead of just saying this counselor sucks, I'm done with counseling, I said that this counselor sucks, but I still need help, so I'm going to find someone that I fit with better to continue the care that I need. For approximately 2 years, since right before COVID, I've been seeing a new counselor here, and she's pretty good. I'll give her that. She told me that she was going to watch my video, so I guess I have to say that. Otherwise, our next couple sessions together might be rough. But no, I enjoy it, and I think that um, things are going better for me in that regard, which is one of the reasons why I'm able to make these videos and talk about the things that I've been through, to not only just try to help myself to get the things off my chest, but to help others that are going through these problems, and to help those that hopefully have never gone through this type of trauma, but to help those people understand that just because you can't easily see what is wrong with somebody doesn't mean that they're okay. There's been a meme on Facebook going around for a while that everyone is fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Be kind. And throughout the years, I have had a lot of people be kind to me, and I am greatly appreciative of that. But I've also had a lot of people be jerks, and if only they knew the type of damage that they could do to someone, not just me, but to anybody, the type of turmoil that can cause, people just need to try to do better. I was in the hospital in Syracuse late January, early February, right around Super Bowl time. My father was able to convince the nurses to let him, well, rewind a little bit. My father had got approval from his military unit, his Navy CB unit, to skip out on his deployment. I say that, but that's definitely not the right words. It's not like he didn't want to go, and he hates me for saying this, but to this day, I still feel somewhat responsible for him not being able to go to Afghanistan. Years ago, he was in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force, and he flew a couple missions in a B-52. When I was in Iraq in 2007, he had tried to convince his naval unit to deploy with another CB unit that was going to the same part of Iraq that I was in. We were 2 or 3 days away from being overseas together, but that got canceled. Now he's finally getting his opportunity to go over and do his job again, and I had to ask him to stop because I needed him with me. And again, I just feel guilty of taking away his dream just because I was selfish enough to make him stay home. But anyway, uh, right around Super Bowl time, the hospitals, they normally have visiting hours. And my father was able to convince the nurses or the administrators or whoever was in charge that it was what was best for me for him to be able to stay past visiting hours and hang out and enjoy the Super Bowl together. And so I believe the Bears were playing somebody. Again, I don't remember too much about that, but he was able to convince it, and it was a good time. I'm glad that he did that because it just made it that much better being with family. Um, Towards the end of my stay at the VA, or one of the reasons, I guess, of why I stayed at the VA for a few weeks was, again, at this point, I had a hole in my head, and the VA was in the process of getting a helmet for me, or I guess not even the VA. The VA told my mother, hey, you need to go out and you need to find a helmet for your son because the way your head is, you have the skin, and then you have a skull, and then I believe there's another layer between your skull and your actual brain. But the skull is the only thing that's protecting your brain. And one of the reasons why I wasn't allowed to walk and I had to wheelchair myself around the hospital was because I was missing that protective barrier between the skin and the brain. And if I had bumped my head, if something had fallen and dropped, if I had tripped and fell and smacked my head, it could have killed me. It could have done serious enough damage to that part of my brain and either killed me or left me in a vegetative state. So my mom was tasked from the VA to find a helmet for me. This will play into further things that the VA didn't want to or couldn't or was incompetent, and they didn't want to provide me a medical helmet, a medically padded helmet. So my mother had to go and buy, I believe it was a skateboard helmet, and then she brought it to the VA, and the people there took all the padding out and redid the padding on the inside of the helmet to make it more protective for me. So if something did fall and hit my head when I had the helmet, that helmet would act as a protective shield so that nothing hit my brain. The fact that she ended up getting a skateboard helmet instead of, like I said, a medical helmet played, in my mind anyway, I could be totally wrong, but it made the next few months of my life extremely difficult. And I guess that's where I will leave it. I hope you all are enjoying the videos. I hope you all are enjoying my story. And I hope you all have a beautiful day.